I would like us to consider that for the mission enterprise to accomplish the purpose for which Christ has sent us to accomplish, going to the whole world and making disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, creating a kingdom of God among men, that there is need for both capacity to accomplish that at an individual level and capacity to accomplish that at a corporate level. So what are we going to look at this afternoon? I'd like us to consider how we can build resilience for missions through capacity building, and secondly, how we can strengthen or resource and strengthen mission organization to sustain themselves. So that will be the overarching thing that we are trying to do. In looking at the synopsis in our booklets, our programs, you will see that I have summarized those two as the main areas that I would like us to have a look at. First, let me have a look at what does it mean to capacity build? What are we talking about? And I have interpreted that to mean that ability for the mission enterprise to have resilience, to be able to overcome and achieve its objective. So capacity building for Christian missions involves strengthening the individuals and the organization's ability to achieve its mission and sustain itself. Those two prongs. I'll be relying a little bit on some of the experiences that I have had as I have worked with some organizations that have these sort of requirements. I'm involved, as I said, I have been involved with Missions of Hope at a board level and later on at an executive director level. But I've also variously been involved with Christian organizations like Love Inc., which is now about 11 years in. And in each of these cases, one of the things that stands out is that both the individuals and the organizations need to develop capacities that propel them to attain its mission, but to also sustain themselves. The other aspect of capacity building is to enhance resilience by developing skills, knowledge, abilities of the individual and the organization and communities to anticipate and withstand and adapt and recover from shocks and stresses. Missionary enterprise, without a doubt, are subject to the usual vagaries of any worthwhile enterprise. That there will be shocks, there will be surprises, of different kinds of surprises. Let me mention one of them. One of the big surprises for me was that working together as believers is not as smooth as sometimes we hope it would be. And that to me was a shock. So if you do not have the capacity to withstand such shocks, you're likely to give up along the way. What are the other shocks that we've seen in disruptions? The disruptions that we were talking about. We live in very disruptive times. Maybe it's disruption as far as resources are concerned, or it's disruptions on security setups. Things cannot continue the way they are. Political disruptions. Just think about it. Right now, as you look at the way the world looks, whether you're talking about the international situation or local situation, there's so much disruptions. And the church and missions are not insulated from the impacts of some of these disruptions. I don't know for sure the impact, for example, on a change of government like in the US, on funding that flows from that direction to Kenya. How does a missionary enterprise that perhaps has relied on generosity from, say, you are benefiting from USAID? I was involved with one of the missions for our Bishop Masika, the Christian Impact Mission. And along the way, they had gained a lot of favor with USAID. USAID had gone into their program and provided some bit of support right there. How do they cope with that? So capacity building really has to look at how do we create resilience through training, education. How do we navigate issues of resource provision, collaboration. How do we get better prepared to anticipate the issues that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis? So mission organization capacity development refers to precisely that, enhancing an organization's ability to effectively achieve its mission by strengthening its systems, structures, processes, and people. And this also includes improving aspects of leadership, adapting to change, managing resources efficiently, and ensuring sustainability. And those are the things that I would like us to focus on this morning. So let me quickly take us through building resilience for the individual. How do you build resilience for the individuals that are players within the missionary enterprise? And without going into too much detail of it, one of the very basic things is spiritual foundations. Is the person involved at whatever level of the missionary enterprise themselves grounded in their faith? Missions is a faith enterprise. It is something that you do because you've been moved and you're responding to God's call. It will take a lot of your faith energy, ranging from the basics of just knowing how to relate with other people, but also keeping a vital spiritual life in our lives. And our brother Mike did mention about that, the need for us to really have a strong dependency on God. So one of the areas that we need to really think about as we think capacity for missions is what is the strength, what is the basic level of discipleship for the people that are involved at various levels, whether as goers or as senders, or whether as people who have responsibility for the various functions within the mission enterprise. So personal growth in faith, in prayer, and understanding of God's word and calling is a critical aspect of building capacity. The order of the Great Commission is go into the whole world and make disciples. So part of that making disciples is capacity building. It's not just enough to mobilize for missions. It's also important to help people get really grounded in their spiritual formation. And beyond just the basics, this whole area of spiritual formation is deeper than just basic discipleship. That people need to truly be well versed. And some of it is things that you can acquire as you are also being mentored. But suffice it to say that that is an important part of capacity building. Skills development is the other one. Missions takes real skills. If for nothing else, just basic human interaction skills. And it's important that as people prepare for missions, they would think about skills development, pursuing training, and resources for individuals that enhance their abilities in areas relevant to the mission that they will go to. And the other area at a personal level, individual level for resilience is envisioning for missions. My take is every believer, as we have learned when we were going through the 40 days of purpose in our church, is really made for missions. And the extent to which they are able to participate in mission is the degree to which they are envisioned for missions. Do they see their calling as a calling to be missionaries? The slight difference I would make with the definition I had Pastor Mike say, you are missionary whether you are home or you are missionary whether you are cross-cultural. It's just the type of missionary that you will want to take. That envisioning is important. You are missionary when you are going, but you are also missionary when you are helping others go. It is a partnership for mission. And this whole area of personal vision for mission is very important, that people get envisioned in it, so that they are ringing, the missionary-oriented churches. People are ringing, how can I be useful in fulfilling the command to go and make disciples of all nations and bringing people to the kingdom of God. That's an important aspect of this whole area. So, resourcing the individual for resilience. But the other area that we want to look at as an area of capacity that we need to build is resilience for organizations that are involved, whether it is the local church or mission agencies or different types of organization. And the list is more or less the same in terms of what needs, it's comparable in terms of the things that people need to have a look at. So what is it that you'll be looking at in developing capacity for missions within the organization, or resilience for capacity for missions within organization? And the first one is a clear vision and strategy. That you want to be able to know clarify your mission. The mission areas are broad and wide. That's why there is not enough organization to conduct all the missions that there are to be conducted. So you'll have some, like in our case, we have a real orientation to the unreached people groups. There will be others within the urban missions, reaching the unreached within the urban areas. Reaching some that are cross-cultural, going across from here to DRC Congo. And each of these, you require to clarify the kind of vision that you want to pursue in that particular area. What do you want to pursue as a vision for your mission organization? Define a clear mission statement and develop a strategic plan that outlines the goals, objectives, and measurable outcomes. One of the dangers in missions is that because it's such a broad and generous call, that we all feel, let's just wake up and go. But it does help to come back and say, yes, we have been mobilized for mission, we want to do mission as an organization. What would be our niche of this big enterprise that we want to deal with? And that is where clarity of vision and strategy comes in. But the second aspect of it is, they say, most things rise or fall on leadership. In the community I come from, it says, when the leader limps, the herd never gets to the pastures. And isn't that true also for missions? Developing leadership in missions is a capacity issue. Investing in training and mentorship programs for leaders at all levels to enhance their effectiveness in guiding the mission. So you have the mission and vision. You want the leadership that will propel that vision to be realized. And closely related to that is corporate governance and accountability. Governance and accountability. Establishing a robust governance structure, and that may go for advisory boards, committees, to ensure transparency, accountability, and ethical conduct is an important aspect of capacity building or resilience, creating resilience, capacity resilience for organizations. The other area is just the area of resource management. A big area. I mean, a mission enterprise that has not figured this area will start and then struggle. Resource management. Develop systems for managing finances, for managing personnel, and other resources effectively. I say this because I have been involved in some missions organization. And some of the areas you find is they are performing very poorly in terms of how you manage people. Actually, to say that they are mismanaging people is an understatement. In some cases, it's an abusive arrangement, all in the name of missions. And why does this happen? Because we've not developed the capacities around, for example, human resource management. We won't even go about money and finances management and the abuses that go there. So the area of governance and accountability is an important one. Resource management. How about this area of community engagement? It's not always easy to just step out and manage the communities to which we reach for missions appropriately In many cases, we thoroughly mismanage them. Whether we are able to actively involve the community in what we are doing, incorporate them through dignified engagement. Again, that's an area that we need to think about as far as resources is concerned. And we can talk about networking and collaboration, being able as a capacity area, being able to build relationships with other organizations that are in the same space we are in, an individual with whom we could share the resources they have, their expertise, and the best practices in the areas of mission that we are engaging in. All these are capacity areas, partnerships, empowerment, sustainability, training programs, and business development activities. All these are areas that we need to think about as areas of capacity building. Let me move on to that and just summarize that to say, in broad terms, if you are looking at areas of capacity development, there are some key strategies that we can pursue as mission spaces. And one of these is leadership and governance. Just making sure that we have strong leadership. Effective leaders inspire their congregations with passion, or their constituents with passion and compassion. For instance, a leader who clearly communicates the mission can motivate church members to serve, can mobilize them to be available for service. I feel very privileged to be part of our church here, because this is one area that we feel has been going well. There's going to be a mission going on. If we are not planting a church, there's a curriculum issue. If it's not a curriculum issue, there's going to be a prisons ministry. Different things, strong leadership. That is important. That's one of the capacity areas for missions. The second one, and this is just emphasizing some of the things that we have talked about, governance structures. Missions enterprise is as successful as there are structures to support it. Establishing a robust governance framework is essential for ensuring accountability and transparency. This may involve establishing an advisory committee or a board of elders to offer support and guidance, and a transparent governance system that fosters trust, which is essential for effective decision making within the church and the mission agencies. Let me just comment a little bit about that. Some of the pitfalls that we see when you analyze many mission agencies and churches in the area of mission is precisely a problem in this area. You started with a clear focus on what you want to do, but because you've not put in the structures that will guardrail that enterprise, it can very easily take off on a tangent, either in malpractices such as misuse of resources or other types of malpractices. But with a strong governance structure, you guardrail the ministry, the mission's capacity to be achieved and achieved effectively. So we cannot gainsay that whole area. We've talked about areas of strategic planning, resource management, and visioning, and having a structured way in which these things are being done. So that is in terms of capacity building for the sending organizations. Now, these are broad areas that we need to engage and ask the question, where do we stand as far as leadership and governance is concerned? Where do we stand as far as our strategic planning and implementation is concerned? How about resource management? And finally, stakeholder engagement. I have commented on that. When you talk about stakeholder engagement, perhaps three things come to mind. Number one, how do we involve the communities among which we work? Actively engaging with the communities enables church leaders to understand local needs better. Organizing community forums or outreach events can create strong relationships based on trust. For example, a church that holds regular community dinners or events can foster connection that translate into collaborative support for local initiatives. So community involvement is one aspect of stakeholder engagement. But the other one is partnership, and I have commented about this. building strategic partnerships. None of us is called by themselves to fulfill the whole Great Commission. The Great Commission is dependent on all actors, each part doing their part. So building strategic alliances with local organizations, international organizations, local businesses, and government entities. I'll borrow an example that I have seen in Love Inc. Love Inc., as you know, is it's really a ministry that of churches, mostly here in Nairobi, that is trying to help churches help people. And one of the partnerships that is very interesting to see at play is when churches actually tap into a government program to meet a need. It is the church meeting that need, but you have collaborated with CDF, for example, to provide a bursary to a child who has been helped through the church program called Love Inc. Collaborations, partnerships with all manner of entities. And this would help to amplify the church influence or the missionary influence. Collaborating effort scales the impact that we are trying to achieve. By collaborating with existing community service churches, we can enhance resource sharing and expand outreach efforts. That's an area that we could speak a lot on, the whole area of partnership. So community involvement and partnership as an important area that we need to consider as we are thinking about stakeholder involvement. Let me give us a picture of the capacity aspects and resources aspect as far as capacity development is concerned. The first one is that you are trying to develop capacity for proclamation and demonstration of the gospel. That's one very key area as far as mission is concerned. Being able to proclaim the gospel and to demonstrate the gospel. What are we looking at in terms of areas that we need different things? The first one is that you have physical facilities that are needed. You have knowledge and skills, we've mentioned that. Finances. You have the whole aspect of human resources. And you also have the aspect of sending, the actual sending enterprise. What are the capacities that are needed in that particular area? So let me just discuss that a little bit. When you look at the sending and sustaining of missionaries, which is perhaps the most obvious of the areas that we look at, missionaries need funds for travel, housing, so you need resources for that to happen. That's an area of capacity. Without adequate financial support, they simply cannot be on the field. It will be difficult. And this is just about any missionary enterprise. Even if it's when we are going to commit it to speak on a Sunday. You need resources. Maybe they are inherent in the people going. They have cars and transport to take them there. And people. That's an important aspect of proclamation, that you need the resources to do that. The second area is in developing and sustaining ministries. Funds are needed in church planting, evangelistic campaigns, discipleship programs, leadership, and even theological training. That's something that you need resources for. And we also obviously will need them for logistics and operations. So that is an area that we need to think through very carefully. What are our capacity levels as far as financial resources are concerned to support enabling proclamation and demonstration of the gospel? The second area is just human resources. Missionaries are people. It's human beings. How are we? These are individuals called to cross-cultural or even in a local situation to to cross geographical boundaries. How are we going about the way we mobilize, but also the way we prepare them for that purpose? How about local believers? Not those going out, but remaining within our churches. How are we resourcing them for missions? Are we creating the consciousness and the awareness about fundraising, support, prayer, backup, their involvement in different levels, local missions? All of those require us to think about that. Support teams. As we talk about human resource, do we rally support teams around missionaries or around people who are doing an outreach? How about volunteers? Many mission efforts rely on short-term volunteers who contribute their time, skills. They may be professionals in certain areas, but they are available for the medical camp that we are going to do this. This whole area of the way we manage people becomes an important aspect of capacity. And the question to ask there is, what is our level of capacity as far as the human resource aspect is concerned? So funds is one of them. Human resource is the other one. The other one is the area of knowledge and skills. And in this is where you find that it's a broad areas, coming from the more formal training, like theological training at different levels. If you're going to raise pastors, you want to have people who are theologically trained and equipped. But even smaller resource training like this one, a conference like this, I remember my initial consciousness about mission was aroused when I was a student through the commissions conferences. And it's just a conference. And by the time I was done with university, I had already formed my vision for ministry and missions. Why? Because of forums like this. So looking at different opportunities for enhancing the knowledge and skills level of believers as a formal way of resource development or capacity development. We had in a session yesterday on Timothy training. Is it Timothy training? Was the correct title for? Yeah, that one, yesterday. A chance for people to be equipped as far as missions is concerned. Practical skills. A lot of the time, we are too spiritual for any earthly good. Many of the mission work happens in an environment where what is needed most are practical skills. We heard of our brother here talk about Mandera, that for you to preach in Mandera, you can't go with a crusade there. What you need is to go as a teacher. There are practical skills, and there may be other practical skills like community development, healthcare, education, agriculture, businesses, figuring out ways of harnessing practical skills for missions as a capacity for missions. A lot of the places where you cannot go with a typical spiritual campaign, you will be able to break through when you go in there with practical skills areas like such as education. And in many cases, those have been the most successful ministries in some of those areas. When you look at an organization like Missions of Hope, their front is education. They are providing education. Actually, when they go to a community does not see them coming to preach. They see them coming to provide education, a practical skill. And that becomes the capacity area that they needed to have a look at. The second aspect of that capacity aspect that I would like to just highlight is the whole area of fostering holistic ministry and sustainable impact. You know, successful missions are missions that are not just hit and run, but missions that incorporate holistic approaches to missions. And what capacities are we looking at here? And I have highlighted a few there. One of them is on finances, being accountable and showing integrity as we do that. The second aspect is having long-term sustainability. I don't know what happened to our presentation. If you could just show that picture, because that captures the essence of what we are talking about. Identifying long-term sustainability, capacity to develop long-term sustainability for missions. Yes, that second there. Yeah, we're good there. So if you look at that, you are looking at being able to look at enabling, we've talked about enabling proclamation. The second one is on fostering holistic ministry and sustainable impact. Being able to think through capacity for accountability and integrity, long-term sustainability for the mission, and humanitarian aid and development, and building relationships and trust. When you talk about humanitarian aid and development, many missions integrate practical aid with spiritual ministry, and we've talked about that. Addressing issues like poverty, hunger, lack of education, and disease. And this requires resources for food, medicine, education materials, clean water initiatives, and sustainable development projects. That's an area that is important to think through when we are thinking capacity for missions. Because if we are not able to think through that, many of the time we do not have the door. The door is not open for us to reach the people that we are trying to do. The second capacity there is on building relationships and trust. Resources, when stewarded wisely, enable missionaries to meet genuine needs and demonstrate God's love in tangible ways, and build trust within communities, which in turn open doors for sharing the gospel. I want to just emphasize that a little bit. I think one of the downsides of ministry is when you get into an environment where either the community or the partners that are involved within a missionary endeavor, there isn't sufficient trust levels. And that is true even at a basic level as mobilization. People get mobilized into missions endeavor, and then they go and find there is no trust levels. What happens at that level? It disintegrates. All the effort in mobilization dissipates. And people leave, either because they have disagreed or it's not working, and things like that. I want to comment on this long-term sustainability capacity. Effective resource management includes the development of local funding sources and the empowerment of indigenous leadership. And this is crucial for ensuring that the mission can continue and thrive even without the continuous external support. Beyond the initial resources availability, are we developing capacity to ensure that we can find resources to support that work? Finally, I would like to talk about capacities in overcoming challenges. We have said that one of the realities in the mission field is there will be challenges, all manner of challenges. And it is important to think through capacities for overcoming challenges. Resources are not just important, but absolutely essential and foundational for the success and sustainability of the Christian missions. But one of the areas that we need to think through is, how do we overcome the various challenges? And let's have a look at some of the challenges that are likely to be of significant attention. And one of them is the whole area of overcoming poverty and needs. When you go to like the unreached people group, I think without exception, one of the areas that you come across is poverty and needs. And it's not just about the North or the unreached people group. Even here in Nairobi, when you go some of the neediest people that require to be reached with the gospel, poverty and need is one real situation that you need to do that. In many missions contexts, extreme poverty is a reality. Resources are vital to alleviate suffering and create opportunities and making the gospel more comprehensible and credible. So you want to develop a capacity for overcoming this poverty and need. You know, if you look at Jesus' model when he was reaching most people, he would first of all touch their physical situation. You are an invalid, he heals you. You are sick, he heals you. You are demon-possessed, he heals you. Before you can embrace the gospel. And I think it's a similar capacity that as missionary enterprise, we need to develop. People don't hear the gospel when they have empty stomachs. They are too preoccupied to find something to eat, to sit down and listen to the gospel. So this is an area of capacity building. And thankfully, like in the case of our church here, we have ministries like Love Inc. But it needs to go broader. Resource development. Our brother was talking about partnering for resources so that we are able to raise resources and help people. In my involvement with Northern Kenya and the Rendiles, I found that once you are able to meet their needs, their children can go to school and have a meal. Now you have an opportunity for a church or a fellowship or a discussion with the leaders and the communities over what they are doing. So overcoming the issue of poverty and need is an important one. But secondly, there is a challenge of navigating cultural barriers. I think it's real. Cultural barriers are real. And that's one of the areas that we need to think about. What resources do we need to support cross-cultural training? If you just take an urbanite here and drop them in the village somewhere to be a missionary, they dysfunction before they start. It's a challenge. But when they have been prepared for it, they're able to overcome that. How about dealing with challenges like persecution and risk? Risks are real. When our brethren from the Congo were talking to us, they were telling us about the challenges with war within the environment. And risks are real, that there will be risks that people face in the mission field. From basic types of risk, one time a team of our colleagues had traveled to Kargi area, Otorot area. And because the terrain you have to drive on is not proper roads like we are used to, they had an accident right there in the middle of between Kargi and Otorot. And you can imagine the crisis that risk presents. And you needed resources to be able to evacuate them. In this particular case, we even had to charter a plane to pick them from there, because otherwise we're going to die down there. So the whole area of thinking through capacity for risk mitigation, how do we ensure that as we do missions, we have the capacity to respond to the situations that are daily our realities in that space. We've mentioned about the area of knowledge and skill, and I will not spend time on that, but suffice it to say that beyond the basic formation as Christians, that is important to also have relevant training, and there are many opportunities available to us. Some people will of necessity go to formal education in universities. We live in a day and age when the resources for training are abundantly available, even online. For example, the whole curriculum for this conference is available on YouTube. So anybody seeking to understand some of the areas that we have had a discourse on, you can make it a point. This will be the curriculum that we use to orient our members to have the capacity for missions. As our brother was talking about transitions in missions, I thought how many missionaries have gone through the process as missionaries, but they have no idea how to handle that area. So they go through the experience and have to learn through the experience, when all it would have taken, perhaps, is an opportunity to listen to that sermon, and they prepare better. Instead of just exiting the mission field drastically, they transition pole. Manage that whole process. And that's both capacity for the missionaries, but also those who manage mission enterprises. So the knowledge areas. We live in day and age when you have many online courses that one can take. And this is important to identify. What are the areas that we can expose ourselves to so that we have the appropriate knowledge and skills? If you're looking at addressing a particular skills area, like agriculture, it's been an interesting strategy to reach out many communities. You may not have studied agriculture, but there are many ways of bridging knowledge areas in that space, so that by the time you go to that community, you are a resource to that community and you have the capacity to support them that way. Let me conclude with the last one, which is just a few thoughts on funding capacity building. And we've said money is a big deal as far as missions is concerned. And I know that our brother spoke about a bit of that. So I'll not go too much into it. But suffice it to say three things as core dimensions of funding capacity within the churches and the mission agencies. And one of them is that, without gainsaying, we have to depend on God. It's a foundational pillar. You have to ask the God of the missions to provide the resources through prayer, dependence on God, but also in biblical stewardship, vision casting, building trust relationships, ensuring transparency and accountability. That is an important thing. The principle is that we acknowledge God is the ultimate provider. And that's an important one. It's a foundational one. But the second one, which is more important, is a strategic, which is equally important, is a strategic framework that we need to consider. The whole processes of budgeting. Do we have those capacities within both the individuals as well as the mission agencies? Are they able to plan appropriately? You know, because we are faith people, one of the dangers you see a lot of the time in mission enterprise is we just go by faith. There is nothing unfaith in planning things. You can plan by budgeting, prospecting, creating a messaging and channels that you're going to use to fundraise, cultivating and soliciting, and making sure that there is retention and gratitude framework, a strategic framework for fundraising. And this is important to consider. I know our brother spoke a lot about it. I just wanted to highlight a few of those in the strategic area. And the first one is you really need to know what it is you want to fund. Define your need and your goals. Develop a detailed, realistic budget. Outline all the mission expenses. What will be required for personnel? What will be required for travel, etc., for programs, for administration. Budgeting is an important thing as a capacity for funding missions. But the second one is identifying and researching potential donors or sources of funds. And we do not have enough time to do this, so I'll just run through this. You need to identify individuals, perhaps churches, perhaps foundations, perhaps other organizations that are aligned to your mission. That's an important thing. And as you do this, what are your personal networks? Thinking through your personal networks, thinking through the churches, particularly churches that have a heart for mission. If you're looking to fund an area, you want to go to people who have an inclination in that area. Otherwise, you'll be knocking rather hard. There are many opportunities for that. The second one is in thinking through a strategic framework for fundraising is developing your communication strategy as a capacity, basic capacity within that enterprise. And that's important. Successful organizations have capacity for messaging. They are able to give their story, storytelling. They say their story. When you're not able to say your story, people don't actually come to your aid or support. But also being able to create urgency and seeing the opportunities when one arises. How about channels? Channels for communication, personal appeals, presentations, direct mails, website. We live in an online day. Websites, online platforms, social media, e-marketing, crowdfunding. All these are opportunities for communicating what you're trying to do as a capacity for resource mobilization. And finally, just being able to make an ask. It's not enough to create awareness, but it's also important to just ask. And once you have received, find a way of acknowledging and stewarding acknowledging and appreciating the people who are supporting your work. That's part of your retention and strategy. I mean, people get funded and go to sleep with the fund. Find a way of keeping the people who are your regular supporters as engaged as possible. I'd like to, as I conclude, just say that as you do all this, especially in our context here in Kenya, that is important to have are thinking of sustainability through local ownership. Many missionary efforts sometimes go to waste when the pioneer missionaries exit the stage. That's the other capacity that I think we need to think about as far as missions is concerned. Active work towards empowering locals and developing local funding streams and local leadership for the enterprises for the effort that we put in missions. It's not enough to go open Kurkum, open Kargi, open Marsabit. At the end of the day, there will be the question of, did we plan for long-term sustainability? And it's all these components together. It's funding there, it is personnel or people, it's leadership. All these become things that we are careful about. And within that context, the whole space of cultural sensitivity. Are we culturally sensitive as we think sustainability? How about partnerships? Collaborate with local churches, community leaders, and other organizations that amplify the impact and build trust. And finally, the whole space of technology. We live in a technology-enabled world. How are we harnessing technology for the future? It used to be, or for missions, it used to be that for you to do any missions, you need to physically cross boundaries. Is that necessary anymore? Well, perhaps yes. But are there new ways of doing it? I'm convinced that the fulfillment of the Great Commission will happen through technology. Because now I don't need to be in Iran to preach to an Iranian. And they are actively available there, online, when you think about it as a capacity. Now, we've used technology for all reasons. Maybe it's time we begin to think very seriously about our capacity to use technology for worldwide missions. For example, if you ever play an online game, you will notice that in searching a partner to play, they come from any part of the world. So it's chess, for example. I'm playing an Iranian. And some of those engagements sometimes transition to actual connections. What stops me from leveraging that as a capacity for the church to do missions? Now, we've talked a lot about Gen Zs and what makes them tick. That is the one area we can mobilize them for missions. And it will happen like that. Because they are daily involved. How about uploading content and all of this? So I just wanted to mention those as areas of capacity building that we need to think about as I bring this to a close. I'm convinced that as we develop those capacities in our various levels, then the work for missions will be greater, will be achieved with a greater ease than if we do not have the correct capacities to drive missions within our churches. May the Lord bless you. I'd like to stop at this point.